The screen. So I will briefly introduce her, Hina Dixit, who is the head of AI and metaverse investments at Samsung Next, also formerly of Apple. So the theme of this is sort of the next AI winter. And the question is, are we starting the next AI winter? Is there a danger of it coming? How might we prepare for this? And let me just give you a brief background into this term. Those of you who, so the current sort of AI surge is 25 years old. So many people in this room were not even using computers 25 years ago. So this is, it's probably worth putting this in context. The concept of the AI winter is, back in the 50s, you had the initial efforts towards artificial intelligence with like the basics of neural networks and such. The first chess games, this kind of thing. 50s and 60s, people had a lot of ambition for how a computer could imitate human intelligence. Okay? This was the first wave of AI, which ended in the early 70s when what they call the first AI winter sets in. Okay? So by the early 70s, people were really disappointed that AI was not delivering what they hoped it would. Okay? The first AI winter was AI in the 70s. Now, starting in the 80s, you had the second wave of AI. And what happened with the second wave of AI is you had governments, especially the US, the UK, and Japan, pouring hundreds of millions into specialized hardware and systems. So here's where you had like the expert systems and such. And now, unless you're right at retirement age, you also don't remember this, because this was in the 80s, right? So towards the end of the 80s, actually 87, is when the US pulled the plug. All the money that was being invested in these specialized technologies was drawn back, and you had entire industries imploding. Okay, so the specialized technology that was driving the second AI wave pretty much ended towards the end of the 80s. A few supercomputers lived on, especially in special labs. But we had the second AI winter starting in about 87. Fast forward 10 years, and now this is where you guys probably, some of you came in. We had the start of the current AI wave. And this is where you saw Big Blue beat the world champion at chess. Okay, so for 40 years, essentially, we were trying to build a computer that could beat the world champion at chess. And in 97, we finally did it. 97 is also when they had the first commercially available speech-to-text. So right now, of course, you open your phone and you hit the microphone and you have very easy speech-to-text, right? But the first available speech-to-text was also in 97. Okay. Then we had a lot of the distributed computers. We had Hadoop and such. So from 97 onwards, there was a very rapid acceleration in both the use of AI and the democratization of AI. So it's the third wave of AI, which we're now 25 years into. So the question here, that we want to discuss is there a real possibility that this third wave of AI will reach an end? What are the dangers that are ahead of us, which might be signals of this, and how do we navigate that? Okay, so we're going to have a discussion also with Hina, who's actually very well placed because well, I'll let you introduce yourself. Hina, can you actually see me? I'm not sure. I can see you, of course, but
I can see you.
Is this your camera here, Georgia, that she's looking at? Anyways, so I'm going to pass it over to you and let you introduce yourself, and then we'll get started with the topic. So welcome, Hina.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm Hina Dixit. I currently head AI investments at Samsung Next, which is the venture capital arm of Samsung. And I'm also focused on some aspects of metaverse investments. Now, kind of like, introducing some of our portfolio companies. You met one of them. DynamoFL was my first investment, which I led when I joined Samsung Next. We have invested in several AI companies which are still in stealth mode, so I'm not at a liberty of sharing, but I can share two of them. So DynamoFL is one, and then another one is Space and Time, which is a data warehouse focused on Web3. Before Samsung Next, I was at Apple for around 8 years, where I led various projects in the space of AI, Xcode, security, accounts, iCloud, I think you name it, and I must have worked on some aspect of that feature while I was at Apple. So I'm very, very excited to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Great to have you. So the first question, of course, is just very open. Do you think there's a risk or possibility that we'll enter into sort of a third AI winter in the near future?
So let's understand where we are right now. Like you were saying that we have crossed a lot of winter streams earlier. And over the last few years, the there has been like a trend to produce better models, and the focus has always been on increasing the training data and parameters of these models. Now, with performant and accessible models, infrastructure, and data combined with ongoing maturity of research approaches like, GPT-3, BERT, diffusion models, we have coalesced into another inflection point where we are crossing from, say, analytical AI into the frontier of generative AI these days. And that's what excites me a lot these days. So I don't think that the winter is here anytime soon. Obviously, like, there might be a day when we totally decide, okay, like, we are not going to use AI. But hey, what causes will lead us to be there, right? Like, so the first cause would be not seeing appropriate results, which is not true. We are seeing a lot of, like, efficient results, just like, Wag said in his presentation. AI can bring a lot of value down, like, the cost reduction is humongous. So I do see a lot of value there. The other aspect where I see, like, consumer cannot relate to using AI anymore, but we are bypassing the analytical AI phase, and we're able to give AI in the hands of common users and people. Companies like Stable Diffusion, which is standing against the model of, like, very model of, like, research, and not handling these projects to or opening these projects to public. They have come up with open source kind of, like, projects, and they are collaborating with several, like, other companies to partner to generate revenue. But at the same time, it does not restrict me to use their product right away and generate images for myself. So I think there is going to be a winter if we cannot convert the current model into some sort of open source where we can engage more consumers and have some, like, free benefits for other people to use AI constantly and make them aware of what are the capabilities of AI. So it's very important to have, like, that open source kind of model to not get where the winter lies. And the second thing is to constantly innovate, and that we are doing, definitely. And I've seen some amazing, like, incredible startups in the arena of generative AI these days. So I do see, like, that wave is coming up. So definitely I don't see a winter in future.
And what about, like, in terms of, like, when I think of the research that's done, right? Obviously, you've got universities who are doing some innovative research, but a lot of it is the big powerhouses, the companies like Meta and Google, who are just investing huge amounts into research. So now, but if we look at some of the news, especially, I mean, we're seeing some of the digital natives sort of laying off large amounts of staff, closing down whole divisions. Obviously, Meta's had some a very large rearrangement in their AI department, and now there's talk of them laying off or rescinding offers for quite a number of people, right? So if we think of the possibility that some of the major research labs in AI are kind of losing steam, do you think that's going to impact us?
I think that's not going to stop us from constantly innovating. I think those layoffs and say rearrangements, they are like part of the bigger picture of where the market is taking us. It has got nothing to do with AI itself. I do see AI still creating a lot of value in terms of, like, generative AI. There's, like, even, like, Facebook and Meta now, they have been focused on a lot of, like, interesting concepts and interesting research work. For example, the make a video algorithm that they just launched recently, Jan LeCun, he posted about it, right? Like, you can create a video just by text, using text. You can generate an image and a video. So we have come really far, and I don't think, like, this make a video just, like, stops there. The application of it is, like, the applications are numerous, right? Like, you can use it for generating some sort of common sense as well, because hey, common sense is nothing but anticipating what is going to be the future, or predicting, like, okay, this is how the sequence of events would go around, right? So in that scenario, if you think of it, using unsupervised learning, like, we and plus, like, using these self-supervised learning methods, we are approaching a point where we are able to research more deeply and promise a real sense and real, dream of common sense in AGI, right? So I don't think these arrangements are part of, winter in AI. These are more part of like where the market is heading currently.
Okay. And let me ask one more question, then I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. A question maybe a little bit closer to your heart in your current role. And that's the VC funding for startups, especially in AI. So if we look at some of the news coming out of CB Insights, for example, 34% quarterly drop, so quarter over quarter drop of 34% in global VC investing. So that's the weakest quarter in 9 quarters, right? Cost of capital is much higher now, more risk aversion. What impact do you think, I'm not sure sort of how to phrase this question, because obviously this is something top of mind for you, right? And I don't know what's sort of a fair question in this, but can you comment on that at all in terms of potential impact and such?
Absolutely. So I kind of like have always thought of this in a way that if your product does have a genuine need, a genuine consumer need, and it's solving a valid pain point, there is going to be some VC out there who will recognize it and would agree to put money on that. Right. However, if you're just creating something like which is going to go viral, or like, which you think is it's nice to have, but it's not an absolute necessity. So I don't think those those particular startups might see some hardships in gathering finances and gathering fundings, but I don't think like genuine startups which are trying to focus and doing some innovative research are going to see these kind of hardships. I'm still like constantly trying to find out like the next cutting edge startups, and I reach out to people myself, like personally. If I like their work, I just do research at my end, and I constantly like reach out to people. And those kind of VCs are the VCs you anyway want to get investments from, right? Because they are really genuinely interested in your work. They understand the problem space where you're trying to solve, and plus they understand consumer pain points. So even if there are going to be those hard days in the following market, like for next 2 years, where you might think, okay, like I'm not producing enough value for my VCs to kind of like profit from. But those kind of VCs are not the VCs that you want to get money from anyway. You want the kind of VCs who believe in your vision, who believe in the problem and solution that you're trying to solve. And I think if you have that, then you're good to go. And those kind of VCs do exist. I used to think the same. I used to think very differently before joining the VC world, and I used to look at it from very far. And I used to think, okay, it's very ruthless culture, but that's not true. Like honestly, as a VC, I did put like effort in creating an investment thesis for myself for around 6 months. And now that I have it, I'm constantly trying to go and look for companies which lie in my investment thesis criteria. Mm-hmm. So I think like if you're solving the right problem, if you believe in your vision, you should continue going forward. And it does not matter like how the market is going on, what is the drop that you're seeing. If you happen to meet a right technical VC who understand the value of your idea and proposition, they will come and they will help you out and they will fund you for sure. So I think when you are a builder, you should focus on the positives and you should keep that faith that, okay, like I'm going to get this done. Mm-hmm. So I don't think like numbers eventually matter in long run. Like these are just next numbers, which are just like, from the market of 2022 to 2023.
Okay, great, thanks. Let me go ahead and open it up to the audience. What questions do you have for Hina?
So I was just curious. We've seen a lot of investment in the SaaS industry, like in the last years, because the unit economics look so great. Mm-hmm. Intuitively, the unit economics of an AI startup might look even better, because maybe I don't need even like 100 engineers, but maybe I just need like 2 very clever PhDs and a few like that, or like not even PhDs, like whoever like trains the models, right, and builds something very fundamentally new, and then maybe a few people that allow access. Do you agree with that, or do you think the unit economics look similar to SaaS, or yeah, what is your, like, it sounds like a dream for a VC, right? Because if I have Dynamo FL guys, they might go through the roof and they might just need 20 people to pull it off, plus some sales staff.
Yeah, I think on the other hand, I do think like the unit economics for even AI can be different based on what the startup is trying to do. So for example, if your startup is constant, like, totally focused on a very large AI model, right? Like if you want to say, like, work on a project like Stable Diffusion, right? You will need those kind of compute resources. Like for example, Stable Diffusion has the 10th, like, fastest computer in the world, right? So you will need people to come together. You will need, like, somebody to, like, give you resources to train your model. And training model itself currently takes anywhere between 300K to $20 million, right? So it's a very problem specific value that is needed. So I cannot compare unit economics just directly that, okay, like, SaaS always costs more or AI costs lesser. I don't think it works that way, because maybe infrastructure value is much higher, or maybe, like, the number of GPUs that you need to purchase to train your model is much larger than compared to any SaaS startup out there. So that's why, like, I don't think it's fair to compare these two in terms of unit economics. I think we are still, like, constantly focused on SaaS startups as well as AI startups. SaaS is one of our primary focus area. We are very focused, since we are at Samsung, like we tend to focus on edge devices and 5G, as well as some aspect of quantum computing as well. So that's, and we have invested in a lot of SaaS companies. That includes Nirmata. There's like Machine5, the bunch of like SaaS companies that we have invested in recently. So I don't think like you can say that one aspect is more important than the other. Both are important, I think.
Okay. We have time for one more question, if there's still a question. Okay, then. I know we're running. Oh, one question in the back.
Hi. You mentioned about you're working with many companies now to invest, right? So, but of the Dynamo FL and the other one that you invested, can you maybe throw some light on what kind of criteria that you looked into?
Absolutely. So I can talk a little bit about, like, my investment thesis, maybe like a little bit. Cannot expose all my cards. But I'm very focused on currently Software 2.0 aspect. I'm trying to see like how we can use AI to leverage to create, future, code ourselves, and not to code just like, using like, existing methods like Tabnine or say Copilot or Codex, right? We want AI to be able to generate language. We want it to generate like, flawlessly any content. We are also tending to focus on like generation of code as well, which can be like broken into three aspects, right? There can be like, code completion, there can be like, complete code generation, or there can be a debugging aspect as well. So, and then on top of all of this, I'm also focused on the ML training aspect as well, right? Like, so there are obviously a lot of companies which have worked in hyperparameter optimization already, but there are very few companies which are focused on self-supervised learning, right? Or there are very few companies which are focused on training large AI models. So those are important as well, right? Like, because eventually we want to reduce the cost of training these large AI models, and we want to bring this cost down to say like, few hundred K from 10 million, $20 million. Plus the turnaround time, like, to train these AI models is humongous. Like, it takes anywhere from like, a month to 6 months to train these kind of models with these many billions of parameters, right? And can we like, prune, and can we make like these models much more personalized? Can we bring these large AI models to edge devices? Is that a possibility? So it's varied range of problems that I'm constantly looking forward to solve. It's not just focused on one area. But these are some problems that I'm seeing currently where AI researchers and startup community can jump in and start making a change.
Great. Thank you so much, Hina. Really, really interesting to get your perspective on all this. Thanks for dialing in.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, this concludes the Startup Study Track. Thanks again to all the speakers. And I want to wish you a good afternoon. Of course, we've got the final plenary. It starts in about 5 minutes, so you still have time to get down there. And I wish you all a good afternoon, a good evening.